Officer Ricardo Leone was known throughout the department as one of the most dedicated and caring officers in the community. Every day, with a deep sense of duty, he faced the daily challenges, knowing that his job was to protect the most vulnerable. He was a family man, the father of 4 children, and his work as a police officer had become a personal mission. But that night, during a seemingly normal shift, his life changed radically. Before continuing, subscribe to our channel and activate the bell. It was a quiet night, the streets deserted, the sound of distant sirens in the silence of the suburbs. Ricardo was patrolling a residential neighborhood when, suddenly, the radio from the station interrupted the quiet. "Station, this is Alpha 9. We have an urgent report. Screams coming from a house on Via del Cares. Possible abuse in progress. We request immediate intervention." Ricardo answered immediately, without hesitation. "Roger, I'm on site." As he drove to the address, a sense of unease filled him. He was no stranger to difficult situations, but there was something different about this call. The neighborhood seemed quiet, but as he parked his car in front of the house, he sensed a tension in the air. The door was ajar, a sign that someone had left the house in a hurry or that something serious had happened. Ricardo stepped out of the car carefully, his adrenaline starting to build. He entered the house with his hand ready on his holster, moving slowly through the entryway. What he saw shocked him deeply. In the middle of the room, a little girl of about 7 crouched in the corner, her face covered in bruises. Her eyes, despite the obvious pain, were filled with a hope that broke his heart. Ricardo paused for a moment, torn between his role as a policeman and the emotion of a father that was emerging. His first reaction was to call for backup and an ambulance, but something held him back. The little girl was looking at him as if she had been waiting for someone to come and save her for a long time. He decided to approach slowly, gently. "Hello," Ricardo said, lowering himself to her height. "My name is Ricardo. I'm here to help you. You don't have to be afraid." The little girl remained silent, but her gaze did not leave his. She took a small step toward him, trembling, and Ricardo understood that he had to be gentle. "What's your name?" he asked her in a gentle voice. Once again, silence, but her eyes were terrified. Ricardo approached slowly, holding out a hand. The little girl, who he would later discover was called Rita, clung to him with surprising strength for her small body. He lifted her gently, trying not to hurt her, while she continued to wrap her arms around his neck. She was light, too light for a little girl her age, and Ricardo felt the weight of responsibility growing inside him. He carried her out of the house toward his car, trying to reassure her with sweet words. Once they got to the station, Ricardo realized that something had changed. Rita clung to him with all her strength every time someone approached. She didn't want to be separated from him, and the terror in her eyes convinced him that he couldn't let her go. Not after everything he had seen. After handing her over to the doctors for an initial evaluation, Ricardo sat down next to her. He decided to turn on the television, hoping that a cartoon could distract her. As the bright colors filled the room, Ricardo watched little Rita. Despite all the pain she had suffered, she managed to smile, even if only for an instant, at the funny images on the screen. That smile struck him deeply. It was a sign of hope, of incredible strength. The night passed, but for Ricardo that was not a night like all the others. He could not simply leave her in the hands of the authorities and move on. The thought of Rita continued to haunt him like a knot he could not untie. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face marked by bruises and those small arms desperately clinging to him. He felt inside himself that he had to do something more. In the days that followed, Ricardo made a decision. He contacted the Child Protection Service and asked to visit Rita in the hospital. The little girl was slowly recovering, but the psychological trauma was evident. When he arrived at the hospital, the social workers offered him something he hadn't expected. "Would you and your family be willing to temporarily take her into foster care?" Ricardo didn't hesitate. He went home that evening and spoke to his wife, Laura, and their 4 children. He told them what had happened, describing in detail Rita's suffering and her incredible strength. Laura listened in silence and then looked at their children. Everyone immediately understood that this was the right thing to do. A few days later, Rita entered their home. She was still scared, silent, and distrustful. She hardly ever spoke, and any sudden noise made her jump. But the Leone family was determined to offer her a safe haven. Day after day, they surrounded her with love and patience. Rita, little by little, began to open up. As the months passed, the little girl began to talk more, to play with Ricardo and Laura's children. The smiles began to return, and her world seemed to slowly regain color. Every progress, no matter how small, was a victory. Ricardo and Laura were incredibly proud to see how Rita was changing, transforming from a scared little girl to a lively young girl. After 3 years, the long-awaited day arrived. Rita's adoption became official. Ricardo and Laura, along with their children, appeared in court. Rita, dressed in a dress chosen especially for the occasion, looked radiant. When the judge signed the documents, Rita approached Ricardo and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Dad," she said in a trembling but emotional voice. From that day on, the Leone family didn't stop there. They decided to open their home to other children in need, inspired by Rita's strength and resilience. Their home became a safe haven for anyone who needed a second chance at life. Rita became a happy girl, full of life and hope. Thanks to the love and dedication of the Leone family, she had a second chance to live a full life, full of joy and serenity. Did you like this story? Leave a comment below. Thanks for watching the video till the end, and see you next story.